All right, I got my guy, Nick Wingo, former firefighter, best-selling author, and entrepreneur. Nick, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, what's up, Joel? I appreciate you having me on, man. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Former firefighter, you and I instantly connect, being a former first responder myself as a police officer for 15 years. You did a lot of time in the business and you got out for a lot of, a lot of the things we see in the first responder background is trauma, PTSD. And man, I'm really curious. Well, let's just fast forward. You're thriving now. You're thriving now, and you're doing something. What I see a lot of first responders too, they get stuck in this mentality. From what I see, you're not stuck. Matter of fact, you're thriving, you're growing, you're producing more and creating businesses. And so, man, I would just love to just learn more about that journey and how you overcame it.
Totally. One thing I want to say is that there has been plenty of periods in my life that I have been stuck. So just because I'm not stuck right now does not mean that I have not experienced that. Because often people think like, oh, you're doing so great and you're thriving and all these things. I'm like, yeah, right now in this moment I'm thriving and things are going pretty good. But I have had plenty of moments where I have been stuck in my crap. I felt just like I could not move. But I was a firefighter for 18 years. Right out of high school, I went in the fire department. I went to EMT school. I went and got my Fire One certification, and I started as a resident firefighter when I was literally just before I turned 19. And from there, I just worked up in the fire service. I became an engineer a few years after that, and then I moved down into this. I started up in the mountains of Colorado, and then I moved down into the city, in a city here that's a suburb of Denver, Colorado. And I went to paramedic school. And when I went to paramedic school, I got onto an ambulance, and that was really my ultimate demise of my career because what happened over the 8 years of me being on the ambulance was difficult to say the least. I lost 10 coworkers in the span of my career, five to suicide, and a few line of duty deaths, half of one crew I lost. So I really witnessed a lot of carnage. I held a lot of dead kids. I witnessed a lot of domestic violence murders and just a lot of bad crap. And it really it started weighing on me significantly. And one day I looked at my partner. I said, "Hey, man, I'm having nightmares and I can't sleep." And he told the captain, and the captain was like, "Hey, dude, you got to take a day off work." And I looked at him and I was like, "I've been telling you guys that for like 6 months. You got to get me out of this, get me off this ambulance." I was at the busiest house in the department, and I was like, I've been telling you guys this. I don't understand why you didn't hear me. I told you I needed to get off this ambulance. I told you you needed to send me to a house that wasn't as busy." And so I got off, went off work, and 6 weeks later, my dad died. And then I had a whole string of events happen that were just unfortunate, but part of what my journey was going to give me. And so I went to treatment. I spent 30 days in treatment at the Center of Excellence in Maryland. And while I was there, I decided, this is it. I'm done with the fire department. I can't do it anymore. I've had enough trauma, and the doctor agreed. And she said, "Look, if you go back, you're going to have just a lot more of the same, and I don't think it's healthy for you." So I went on a journey of like self-discovery. Like, okay, what the heck do I do with myself now? I can't be a firefighter anymore. But my identity had become in being a firefighter. In fact, when I was in treatment, I had this question I was asking myself of like, who am I? Who is it? Who am I? Because I really don't know who I am anymore. Because my identity was, Nick Wingo, father, son, firefighter, right? Husband, like those were the things that identified me as who I was. And so I had to really evaluate like what that was going to look like for me now moving forward in my life. And so I went seeking anything I could. I went and learned about breath work, and I thought I was going to be a men's coach, and I thought I was going to do the men's retreats. And so I did a men's retreat, and I took 8 men out, and it was great, but it just was never fully me. And so that led to me starting my own company, AwakenIV, through a whole lot of failure and falling and figuring out where I was going. So that's me in the condensed down, 10-minute version.
Dude, that's awesome. And I just think so many guys looking back now, you had all these signs, like you just said, I've been telling you that for 6 months. Why now? Why are you going to give me one day? You and I grew up in the era, and I think things are changing now, whether for good, for better, or for worse, right? We see a lot of, I don't know, I think we would say you're creating firefighters, you're creating police that are soft. right? Like,
Totally.
oh, as soon as something comes up, you get an owie, like, make sure you're off for a couple of days. We don't want to hurt your feelings. And I see a lot of that in the police academy. I was a trainer for many years too. So I saw it firsthand. And there's a balance, I think, of, hey, toughen up, right? And, then there's the, hey, self-care. We actually do need to care for this person. We don't want them to go down that road. So there's definitely a balance. I see things going, now it's the other extreme. But when you and I were coming through, it was like, hey, I don't want to hear your complaints. I don't want to hear your problems. Matter of fact, you're weak if you do.
Totally.
So what do you think, what would you tell guys now that are coming into this profession, or maybe you've already been in for 5, 10, 15 years like yourself? What would you say, hey, man, these are some things you need to look out for. And if you're experiencing this, I would highly recommend you get some help, some therapy, something.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me recognizing is like, if I would have realized how absent I was from my family, if I would have realized, how easily I was triggered, the road rage, the just like the from 0 to 100. If you're somebody who's 0 to 100 all the time, that's not normal. Like that's something that you are. This has happened to you because of all your trauma and all the crap that you have. And so just recognizing and just being real with yourself of where you actually are. And I know men don't like to talk about this, but actually feeling your feelings and being okay with your feelings and being okay with like, oh, I'm sad, or oh, I'm mad, or oh, I have this feeling that's arising in me. Because what happens with men specifically is that a lot of us, most of us probably, unless you had parents who taught you this, is we have like zero emotional intelligence. And here's the
Correct.
problem with that is that when we have no emotional intelligence, we disconnect from our bodies. And because our emotions rise up in our bodies. And so when our emotions start to rise up in our bodies, then those emotions aren't safe, so our bodies aren't safe. And that's not good, because we have this heart brain connection, this gut brain connection through the vagus nerve. And so that connection is how we function and operate, and that's how we can live an abundant, amazing life. And so until you can be okay with your emotions, you're never going to be living a fulfilled life. And so my biggest thing is helping men specifically, because women tend to do a little bit better than this, than men do. The women that are in the fire service or police officers, they tend to be like okay with their emotions. It's really recognizing like, oh, I have emotions and they live in my body and my body's safe.
You hit on something really, really key. My wife would say this all the time to me, Joel, you're dead. It's like I'm talking to a dead person. You never respond. And I would just, especially when conflict would come, right? I would just stare at her and just look at her. And it wasn't that I was not listening. I actually just didn't know how to respond. And so I would detach emotionally. And it was a skill I probably had picked up from childhood to then becoming a police officer. And it actually kept me alive. In childhood, it probably kept me alive, and it was a survival skill, and it kept me alive for sure, and made me actually it's a heck of a skill to have in combat or in the work that we were doing, but didn't translate so well to family life and with kids. That's for sure.
Totally.
You also mentioned 0 to 100. I love that. And I've felt like that, and I've noticed that about myself and had to do a lot of work. Is there one thing that you would say, if you're seeing yourself going 0 to 100, start doing this right away? Like, do this thing and it's going to help that. There's a lot of things you have to do, but just start doing this and that'll help bring some stuff down.
Totally. Grounding, learning how to ground yourself. And so for me, I ground through breathing, or I go out and I put my feet in the earth, my bare feet into the grass or into the dirt. I do, I'll do like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that's exercise in like 5 things I see, 4 things I hear, 3 things I smell, 2 things that I taste, and then so going through those things and just going, okay, I am like going 1,000 miles an hour right now, and my body and myself is needing something, and so I'm gonna slow down and ground myself in order to figure out what my need is, and then once I figure out what my need is, then I can ask for help.
I love that, dude. You killed it. That's so good. Anybody who's listening to this is going to really, that's a great one. And then also when you left the center of excellence, Was there one thing that there's so, again, there's so many facets that you picked away in the skills, and then a lot of it was the self-discovery. I know a lot of first responders on the West Coast will go to this trauma center, and they talk great things about it. It's like a week-long process. For you, was there one thing that stood out that you had like left with? You're like, oh my God, aha, that is why I'm doing this, and I'm so happy I learned this skill.
Yeah, the biggest thing is just slowing down, and just being present with myself and being okay with me, because I was not okay with me. And so the center of excellence for me was a pause. It was the most important pause I needed in my entire life. And so now I recognize, like, I need those pauses from time to time. And so now what I do is, like, in fact, I just went away for a weekend this last weekend where I was gone, and it was quick. I was gone Friday morning until Saturday afternoon, and it was a me thing. I did donate my time to help out some people with IVs. However, it was a lot about me. And so I'm learning to take those pauses for me to separate and get away from all the crap that's going on around me, to just recalibrate and go, okay, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Nice. That's great. And I think a lot of men, there's this idea of that rejuvenation, the refuel, and a lot of us don't know how to do that or turn it off. But it's actually that it might look like you said, it might look like we're detaching again, but actually we're not. We're refueling and we're coming back better for our wife and for our family. So I love that you said that. Talk to me about your new venture and just why, through your self-discovery process and everything you started learning about with self-care, self-healing, biohacking, how that led to IV therapy and why you find it just like one of the most pound for pound best things you can be doing for your health.
Totally. So I started I knew that IV therapy was a thing about six years ago. I knew it was going to be a huge rise in it. And I started working for a company, doing mobile IV and learning about IVs about 6 months before I left the fire department. And so it was something I was working for somebody else. And then I realized that I could do it on my own and I didn't have to work for that company. But in this process, what I learned is that the IV therapy, number one, the NAD plus, it has helped me with my mental health significantly. They use it for addiction treatment. They use it for post-traumatic stress. They use it for all kinds of stuff, and it just really helps with the brain fog. It helps with some of the joint pain and that stuff. It helps with inflammation, and then the IV fluids, the vitamins. It just makes you feel so rejuvenated. The way that we eat these days is not. We just can't get all the nutrients and vitamins that we need fully. I mean, you have to have a super widespread diet of stuff that is not offered to us anymore by what the ground has, because of all the poisoning of the food and the bad crap that's in our food now these days. You're just never going to get the full range of vitamins that you really truly need. And so to be able to do that via IV fluid, and give you the nutrients that you really need to get your brain working correctly, to get your body functioning correctly, it's really a game changer.
Nick, how often will you do now? Obviously, this is your business now, so it's a little bit different. But before it was your business, and you just kind of again, back to the self-discovery phase when you first discovered this. How often would you go out and do this therapy, or what would you recommend people like myself? Hey, man, come out and do it once a month, and that's a good kind of strategy for just anti-aging, longevity, refuel.
Totally. Yeah. So I do it for myself. Optimal, right? This is optimal. Understanding that some people can't afford the cost because there's a cost to it, right? Optimal is every 2 weeks. I do myself an IV every 2 weeks. If you can do that, that's the most optimal amount to do it. Most of the people I see, they'll do it about every 4 to 6 weeks. Generally, I'll see people once a month, and they see massive improvements in their mental clarity, their energy levels are better. They're just general wellness. They're not getting sick like they used to. So just overall, if you can commit to doing it once a month, game changer for sure.
And talk to me about NAD plus and kind of explain, a lot of my listeners are, biohackers and alternative health folks. So they understand NAD, but talk about NAD a little bit more, we know right now that it's like an anti-aging molecule. NAD, I always think of it as like energy, right? And it's like ATP
Totally.
producing energy. But there's
Mhm.
also been a lot of research, and I don't know all of it, with like PTSD and trauma, and they've seen stuff. And you mentioned a lot of the brain fog effects. I don't know a lot about that. Talked about that.
Yeah, so it's really what it's doing is it's helping those neurons in the brain be primed to fire again. So it's helping those little dendrites and neurons. It's giving them a life again. It's it's feeding them. In NAD, at the most basic level, to understand NAD is if you think about the cell is we're a compilation of a ton of cells, right? And the way that the cell work is you have the sodium potassium pump. That's how nutrients cross the cell wall. Well, NAD is what's called a helper cell. It helps the nutrients cross the cell wall, and then it acts as a scrubber in the cell, cleans the cell, and makes the cell more ready available to absorb the nutrients. And so NAD in itself is cleaning your cell and making it, giving it the ability to absorb the nutrients that it needs. And so our brain is an organ that needs to be fed nutrients, right? And so if your brain is not able to absorb those nutrients properly, then you're not going to be at your optimal performance, your optimal well-being. And so that NAD is going to help you be at your optimal wellness, at your optimal performance. It's going to help those ATP. It's going to help you feel, and when you feel better, you you just you when your body feels better, then your brain feels better, and your mental health is better, and everything in your life is better.
So true. And my business partner, I just got off a call with him the other day, and he goes, "I'm ready to go, man. I just had an IV NAD treatment. It's been so transformational for me. I do it once a month." And he said he just feels alive and just so energized for the few days after it. And so now it's just part of his regular game changing. And then now I'm just thinking for the first responder community, people that are in high stress environments, man, that could be something that refuels them. Maybe it helps with their sleep, and if they can do that, then they're going to be able to engage that prefrontal cortex and make maybe more logical decisions out in the field and with their family and home. I don't know. Have you seen that?
Totally, yeah, 100%, absolutely. Speaking of, just a side note, the prefrontal cortex, interesting fact, if you're triggered, you lose your ability. So the first thing that when we get triggered, the first thing that happens is that we lose our prefrontal cortex. The blood shunts away from it, and we lose 10 to 20 IQ. And so, just for yourself, if you're triggered and you're not doing well, don't make any decisions because your IQ has literally dropped 20 points when you can't use that prefrontal cortex. But the NAD will help you keep that function, right? It'll help that part of your brain actively improve. So
Yeah. One of the things too, and I've seen with IV therapy, I was just looking at, I'm out here in Idaho now, and I was looking at some places nearby. It's a little bit expensive. I was surprised. I was like, man, it's like $300 for like one shot, or even like I think 4,000 if you want to do like multiple. Do you see that kind of coming down in the next couple years, and just with everything exploding right now?
I don't see the cost coming down just because of what's going on with our economy.
Yeah.
I think that's more of a money issue. And what I do foresee though is insurance companies starting to cover these treatments.
Ah,
There is a rise in the insurance companies starting to pay for super bills. And then here shortly, pretty soon, this is going to be alternative medicine that's actually approved by insurance companies. So I do foresee not the price coming down, but insurance companies covering these treatments.
very cool. And then, we were talking offline about IV therapy and just the fact that, man, there's so many, there's all these ones popping up, and you said, yeah, Joel, of course they're all popping up, but a lot of them don't know what they're doing. Can you kind of talk
Mhm.
about what you see in the industry or some flaws, and what's missing, and what's going to make Awaken IV, what you're doing, a lot different?
Totally, yeah. So, like one of the things that's happening right now, a prime example is, anytime we have an alternative medicine treatment like this come up, you're going to have people who are not doing the right thing. So there was this last year, I think there was a company that was injecting food coloring into IV bags and dripping that into people to make people think that they were getting vitamins, right? And so there's going to be people who are just not doing the right things. And so there's a lot of regulation coming down right now. So we're going from a really widely unregulated industry to a very regulated industry, which is why insurance companies are going to accept these treatments. That's why they're going to pay for them, because it is becoming regulated. So, for example, one of the things that's coming up is USP 797. It goes into effect tomorrow. It limits the amount of ingredients we can put into the bag, and it just makes things a lot cleaner of how we're doing stuff. And then also, there's going to be a lot of stuff around, you know, how we can administer, how we can't, what's the techniques we can use, what are the techniques we can't. And so, and the other thing in the industry right now that's going on is there is a lot of people, what happens is they're just kind of thrown into this, and they have a lack of education on what they're doing. So they don't know what the vitamins are, they don't know why they're giving the vitamins, they don't know the benefits of the vitamins. And so with at Awaken, we're going to be the first to market with a 40-hour training program before anybody can operate. You will not find that in the industry right now. Most people will have maybe a 2 to 3 hour training, and then a couple IVs, and then that'll be it. I will have the most comprehensive training program that is the market currently.
And another thing we were talking about is just that bio individuality, right? Like we all have this bio individuality. We all come in with certain needs and fixes. And you were saying too, a lot of, the people are just behind the front desk, and there's no judgment. It's just that they are, like a nurse practitioner who knows how to find a vein. And so they may not know how to serve you the best and really equip you up for success and long-term success, not just come in here once, get an NAD drip, get a Myers cocktail, feel a little bit better. Like, we want to keep this going for you so that we actually see peak health and optimization, right?
Totally, absolutely. One of our core values is education. And the reason being is that if I educate my people and then I educate my customers, their overall well-being is going to be better. And so I'm going to educate my customers. And sometimes what that looks like is educating that, hey, you may not need an IV. Maybe you need some other things, and it's not that you need IV treatment right now. And so that's my commitment to people, even if I'm going to lose a customer to that, because I want to make sure people are getting what they need, not just a transaction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that. Servant leadership. You're being that servant leader to your business. So that's amazing. What's exciting in the business of IV therapy? Like, what's up and coming? We talked about NAD. I know people are now doing methylene blue, which is kind of a hot mitochondrial support supplement. Anything else that you're seeing, or even maybe you want to talk about the methylene blue? I don't know.
Methylene blue I haven't got into a lot yet, but what I am getting into right now is ozone therapy. So ozone therapy it's actually one of the most widely studied things in the industry, and it's not being utilized by people. And in fact, when we come to market, so we're a mobile only company, we go to people's homes. When we come to market, we will be the first mobile company to offer ozone therapy. And so in the next few months, we do have that coming. And man, the ozone therapy, it helps with oxidative stress. So there's, it's going to help athletes with their improving their VO2 max. It's going to help those patients who have long COVID. It's going to help a lot of these people who have just, chronic inflammation. So the ozone therapy is really promising, and it's pretty amazing, some of the benefits and some of the stuff it can do. So I'm really excited about bringing that to market in home.
Yeah, ozone is really neat. Ozone is known as O3, not O2 is oxygen. And I had Dr. Robert Rowan and Micah Lowe on the podcast, both ozone experts, and kind of talking about that. Matter of fact, serendipitously, I just did I did an ear treatment for my son yesterday. He had a pretty bad ear infection. It was bothering him. And so I ran ozone through him for 2 rounds of 5 minutes directly into the ears. And guess what? Lo and behold, he's feeling great again. And
Totally.
back during the pandemic, I did even rectal ozone. Now, I have a home system, so that's great. But Nick, what you're talking about for folks that don't know is the best form, like I just mentioned to everybody, is you can do dental ozone, which I've had reverse cavities in my kids' teeth. I've done it, like I mentioned, rectally and through the ears. There's ozone insufflations that you can do for wound healing. What you're talking about is actually the best form, from what I understand, which is injecting in the body, and what a lot of people refer to as the 10 pass, which is you're going to circulate. You can explain it better than me, but I believe you circulate the ozone in your blood and then you pass it back through. Is that what you're going to be doing for people in their home?
Totally, yeah. So there's a few different ways you can do it. The way that we'll be doing it, just because of the mobility of it, is that we will take a bag of fluid. It's got 120 cc's of fluid. You add a little bit of heparin. It's a blood thinner to make sure the blood doesn't clot. You fill the bag with 200 ml of the patient's blood, and then we inject ozone gas into that blood, and then we drip that blood back into you. So we're going to give you that O3 directly into your bloodstream, and it's really going to be incredible, and really just give you a ton of benefits.
Yeah, man. I want to switch gears and something I didn't ask you earlier, and I was just thinking about. Actually, before I do though, anything else you want to talk about in terms of IV and just the IV industry and just kind of what you're doing? Any exciting projects?
Nothing per se. For me, what I'm doing right now is I'm going to become a high level concierge service. I'm moving away from the hangover, migraine, cold flu to the hey, let's get you to your optimal performance, and let's do this on the front end rather than hey, I got sick, now let me get an IV. Let's just get you to the point where you're just healthy all the time, so you're not sick, you're not feeling like crap, and you're at your best performance, and you're at your best self.
Dude, I was just thinking, what about like, what would be awesome too is like if a firehouse would like have you come in and like do a whole day of drips for like the entire squad or something, like, you know what I mean? Like, let's keep those first
Totally.
responders on the front line, like in top gear. I mean, do you see industries or corporations kind of like, let's do that. Let's do an IV drip day and people can cycle in and through while they're on their shift, things like that.
Well, the fire department's a tough one because
Yeah.
it's always a money thing. But I am starting to partner with some corporations where I am coming in and doing their people once a month,
Yep.
and providing, I'm tapping into their wellness programs and giving them another option for wellness. So.
Nice. Love that. I mentioned I want to switch gears because I wanted to ask you a question. I think a lot of first responders would just hear your story and find it really inspiring. And I know a lot of first responders, and you do too, guys that, they want to get out of the industry or they just want to start a side project or a side business. They really want to do that entrepreneurial thing, but they feel stuck or they can't. Like, what advice would you give them and some of the mistakes that maybe you've learned and said, oh, I wouldn't have done that, but man, I'm glad I went through it.
The big thing for me is coming back to having your identity being in first responder. Like that's not who you are. And one of the things that I'm sure you heard it too, on the police officer side is that you often hear, well, I can't do anything else. I can't be anything else. This is the only thing I will ever be able to do because there's no way to transition out of this. And that is the biggest crock of crap. That's the biggest lie that anybody has ever told you, because you can be or go or do anything you want to. Because here's the thing. This is my belief, and this is where I'm coming from, is that if I am created by God in his most perfect image, then I am a creator. And how did God create? He created with his words. And how do I create? I create with my words. And so whatever I speak is what will become. And so I would encourage you is that if you want something, speak it and become it, because you are a creator, just like our creator is a creator.
Dude, so powerful. I love that. That is amazing, and that's great advice. Man, amazing stuff. I'm gonna wrap some things up and ask you maybe some final round questions. But before I do, just anything I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
Nope.
Could always bring you back on, dude. Love chatting with you. Wanted to ask you just some final round questions, and number one is what were some choices, or maybe a choice that you think you made that made you who you are today?
Oh, I lost you. I lost you for a second there. What?
Oh,
Ask the question again.
yeah. I asked. I'm curious. What are some choices, or maybe a choice that you think you made that made you who you are today?
It was me being authentically me. It was me just saying like, this is me, this is who I am, and just allowing for that to happen. When I was getting close to leaving the fire department, I kind of knew, I knew it was coming. I felt it coming. I felt that I was done. I felt that, and in fact, that it goes back to that whole speaking things. I started speaking that I was done, and then it was not too long after that I was done. And so, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is that, again, it goes back to that what we speak is what we become. And so I recognized that when I was coming to the end there, it was I was speaking that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. So good. Dude, you're doing so much in the health and wellness world, and you're an inspiration for a lot of folks. Who inspires you?
Oh man, who inspires me? Well, it's so funny. Tony Robbins was the first book that I read that started down my personal development. So he always speaks to me. Ed Milet, I love following Ed Milet. He's such a great dude to follow. Um, and then right now, one of the guys I'm really following is Gary Brecka. That guy's he's a force. I got a chance to meet him just last week, and what an incredible dude. So that would be my three right now.
Wow, very cool. Yeah, I've seen Gary a lot on social media, but I've never had a chance to meet him. So that's neat to hear. It's always neat to hear someone like you feel like they're the real deal, not just the persona that they portray on social media, but like in person too. So,
Totally.
what about rituals? Do you have any like hacks or practices or that you do on a regular basis? I've seen you do cold plunging and you got the IV therapy. What's like a regular for you?
The morning routine. So the morning routine is I wake up, read the Bible to my wife. I do, oh, excuse me. I do 3 rounds of Wim Hof, and then I do a thing called the brain tap. It's binaural beats with lights that flash on the eyes to help to get you in a meditative state. And then I work out, and then from the workout, I go to this infrared sauna, and then from the infrared sauna into the cold plunge. And that's my morning routine every day. It's about 2 to 2.5 hours daily. But that's how I stay operating at my optimal wellness and mental health. Because my mental health, if I don't do that, I notice that my mental health goes down.
Yeah, same. I get up at 4:30 every day, and I have to just do the things that you're talking about to take care of me. Because if I don't, then I feel like I'm behind the eight ball, and I get stressed. I get frustrated. So that helps me stay aligned. Dude, I'm a big reader. You have a best-selling book. Are there any top books that you mentioned Tony Robbins earlier? Are there any top books that you'd say, guys, go out and read this book. It'll change your life.
Yeah, Atomic Habits by Atomic Habits is huge. And then the most recent book that I just read is called Mind Hacking Happiness by Sean Webb.
Hmm.
There's two books in the series. It's incredible. It was really a great book that helped me a ton.
Wow, I haven't heard of that one, so I'm gonna check it out. My guy Nick Wingo, best-selling author of Building Grit: How to Fight Fires of PTSD and Come Out Strong on the Other Side. AwakenIV. Tell everybody where they can find you, connect with you, and just learn more about everything that you're doing.
Totally. So there's two spots that make it super easy. NickWingo.com. It's got all my personal branding, personal social pages, and then AwakenIV.com. That's got all the social YouTube channel for the IV stuff. So I keep it kind of separate, but those are the two places you can find me.
Awesome, brother. Thanks for being on the show. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thanks again. I enjoyed the conversation.